Hello. Want to wish everyone out there a very, very happy new year. It's hard to believe it's already 2022. Um, Hope you guys all had an amazing Yule. I know the Flavel family had a fantastic Yule, and it's been really great to see around the country all of the different AFA Yule celebrations. Looks like you guys have had a great holiday season. And it's really encouraging to everybody else to see you guys getting together. Special shout out to those guys up in Washington State. Folk builder Mason Johnson up there put on an astounding looking Yule celebration. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend this year. But that was a huge turnout. Looked like a beautiful spot. So congratulations on that. And folks that were up there and able to attend that, I'm envious. We had a great Yule out at Odin's Hoff. And so excellent. 2021 was a really good year for the AFA. It was a very, very special year. We got a lot of great things happening. We saw tremendous activity at all of our Hoffs, but specifically at Thorshoff and Baldershoff. Baldershoff, this is kind of their first year or last year rather, was their first year that they got their feet under them. We got that use permit okayed in December of 2020. So 2021 was Baldershoff's first year and did fantastic. I was fortunate enough to be able to make it out there and spend some time with those folks several times during the year. And what they've done is truly amazing. Watching that grow and thrive is fantastic. I am very, very excited about things we got coming up, about things we're going to do in 2022. And we're just starting the year off right. And there's no better way to start the year off than talking to you guys. I'm gonna look over here on the side. Thank you so much, everybody, making time on in your day, on your weekend to join us. I know usually we do this during the week, but I try to rotate it around different days because maybe we'll get a different audience, get some folks that maybe work or for whatever reason can't make it some of the other times. So it's great to see you guys here. Anybody got questions to start off with this evening? I know it's a busy time of the year and there's been a lot going on. I know one thing we got a question about, and I wish that I had a little bit tighter answer, but it is something that we're working on in the coming year, was coming of age ceremonies. And that's something that we've been asked for a very long time. And I wish that I had an awesome one to roll out to you, but I do have some important thoughts on them that I think are relevant. It's very important that when we do any kind of ceremony, that it's real and that it symbolizes something that we truly mean. Any ritual we do, all of the value of it comes from intention. And if you put real intention and sincere intention into something, it's very different than if you don't. It's one reason in the House True Folk Assembly, when we do weddings, we only preside over legally binding weddings. It's very important to us that a couple that comes to us for a marriage, not only are they married before the gods, but they're legally married where they're at, where they actually have skin in the game. It's a legitimate marriage. And by the same token, when we do any form of coming of age, the idea is transitioning from one stage in life to the next. Now, one thing that we're working on in the AFA is a couple of those: a starting of the process and then a complete coming of age for both boys to men and girls to women. It's important that on the other side of that transition, when you go from child to adulthood, that you're treated and viewed by your community that way. So the other really important plank for the House True Folk Assembly is when we get all the way done with a stage and we say, now you're a man or now you're a woman, we want that to have meat to it and have weight to it. So we want to only perform that when someone reaches the age of 18. um, I've seen in the past these coming of ages um, where a parent will give a 10-year-old boy a sword and declare it a coming of age ceremony, and then right after the ceremony, okay, it's bedtime. And it's really important to me that we don't do that. When we welcome someone as a man or as a woman, they need to be treated differently than when they went into that ceremony as a child. And I think that something that's always been utilized in the history of modern house true has been an exchange of not exchange, rather, a gifting of a weapon to a young man as they become a man. And I like that, and I like the spirit of it. But I think something's gotten lost in the way that it's done. Very often we'll see some of these, very young teens given a sword. The same young teen would not be given a rifle, would not be given, another means of taking life. And it's important that we don't do ritualized action that doesn't have meaning to it. So when we hand a boy a weapon in order to make him a man, we're handing him the implement of death and of defending his family with the power to take life. And if we wouldn't trust him with that in a very real way, with a contemporary weapon that we genuinely have a fear of, then we shouldn't ape that action with an archaic weapon, because it's really important that what we do isn't pretending. What we do is very real. And so those are my thoughts on it. But it is something that we're working on and developing, and hopefully this time next year we'll have a much, much better protocol for that. Excellent. So, all right, Sarah, we have a question on the side. As some of you may have noticed, I've been wearing a stole for the last, I want to say since the end of August, but yeah, I've been wearing a stole. And a lot of people have wondered about that. It's a new thing in the AFA that we're getting made. It's a process that we've been trying for a long time, and getting custom work done has taken a little bit longer than we had wanted. But yeah, so the stole specifically that I'm wearing, I'm trying to think of the best place to start on it. Okay, so the stole in general. Some people have noted that it is similar to what various sects of Christianity use. That's because it comes from a common Indo-European source. The stole itself isn't a Christian garment, though Christians have chosen to wear it. It's a Western religious garment, and it was started and popularized by the ancient Latins as a sign of a certain amount of clerical education. So the stole has a built-in religious significance. We want to make sure that we want to have a special clerical vestment that separates our presiding Gothar from the rest of the folk when conducting ceremonies, and that elevates that position and that person while they're conducting a holy rite. And the stoles, something we talked about, and are very, I think they look nice. I think it's a very nice touch. Something that Witten Svan Harold has been working on getting made. We're going to have those for all of our ordained Gothar. The Witten stoles will look different from mine, and then the Gothi and Githia stoles will look different from that. The colors of the stole that I wear, it's gold with a Rhydho rune in AFA blue with a little bordering of white, and those are the three AFA colors. Our Witten will have white stoles, and our Gothar will have AFA blue stoles, and again, alternating colors on those runes. Now, the Rhydho rune is very important to the Austrian Folk Assembly, and it's the rune that symbolizes our priesthood, that symbolizes our Gothar. There's a lot of meanings to it. I know that a very common one is journeying, but a really important element to that is right action. and right action at the right times. When we perform ritual, we're part of that cycle. When we are representing our folk, we're directing that right action at that right time. It's also a rune that symbolizes the knight and the rider. It symbolizes nobility. It symbolizes things that we want to aspire to. And again, that rightness of action and rightness of behavior. The Rida rune is coincidentally, and not coincidentally, it's important that we've chosen it for this purpose, was the original symbol of the Austrian Free Assembly way back in that earlier incarnation of the AFA. So it's very important. It's the rune that is on our Gothar ring, and it also adorns our Gothar stoles. Now, those runes might be different when we have stoles for different occasions, like weddings or a baby naming or a funeral. But that's why we have these for our standard stoles. And here in the coming months, you should be seeing those on our Witten and on our Gothar. Kevin, do we accept Hindus? I'm not sure what that question implies. As I saw somebody comment over in the side chat, Hinduism is kind of a modern word that is, I guess, the current parlance for a very old tradition. As far as pure Hinduism, Hinduism does come from a common root with Ausatru, but over the years, especially since it's gone by the term Hinduism, has taken a number of very distinct changes that have come with the mixing of the group of people we tend to associate with Hinduism, which are the folks in India. And the Dravidian influence of non-Aryan peoples from the South has really shaped a lot of what modern Hinduism looks like. And that time separated has really changed how that faith approaches the divine. But as a guy over on the side, I'm sorry, I didn't see whom. Anyways, mentioned about Dharma. Dharma is a concept that predates Hinduism, but a lot of Hinduism would claim that as theirs. But it's a very old, very Vedic concept of the right way of doing things, the Dharma being the way. And that's something, there's modern practitioners that want to call their practice Dharma. One of the individuals is a guy, Frank Morales, of the, I'm sorry, I forget his Sanskrit name, his Sanskrit title, but who's of the International Dharma Society. And those folks have been very courteous to the Austrian Folk Assembly. The idea of a dharmic faith, or a faith that follows that natural order, that natural law, coincidentally, that does connect with that Rida rune that we spoke of earlier. That tends to relate to Ausatru very well. And so there is some overlap in those communities. If you're referring to Hindus as a group of people, as in Indians, as I've said, the Austrian Folk Assembly is pan-Aryan, but I think most people who, and there may be small pockets, but most people who are of Indian descent are a very mixed group of people and wouldn't really fit what we call white. And that's one of the reasons the AFA uses the term white. It's not to be contentious, but it is to be divisive. It's to divide us and not us. So there may very well be some specifically higher caste Indians that have maintained that genetic integrity, and we'd certainly consider that on a case-by-case basis. But like I said, that's typically not what we interact with. Sorry, guys, I'm reading over here on the comments. All right. Gothi Daniel Young is asking if I can touch on the subject of oaths and the seriousness to them. Absolutely. Oaths are extremely serious. Just like I was mentioning earlier about the coming of age ceremonies, very often, and also true, people are excited by the archaicness of our heroism of the past. A big part of the warrior tradition is making these big grand oaths. So I think we feel like we should, or we feel like we ought to make these big, elaborate, grand oaths to things. There's nothing wrong with that as long as we take the oaths with the gravity that's due them. But the concept of a man being only as good as his word is essential to Asatru, and it's been essential to Asatru since the very beginning. Oaths are extremely, extremely important, and they should never be made lightly, and they shouldn't be made frequently. They're something that should be made seldomly, and when they're made, with the greatest of gravity. And it's one reason that we make a point in AFA symbols. So the AFA symbol is 3 rounds. 1 round to the grand symbol, 1 round to the gods, 1 round to our ancestors. And then in the 3rd round, the round for the heroes, that one tends to be the time that people would make oaths. We always tell people beforehand to get those oaths approved by a Gothi at the event. And the reason for that is we care so much about oaths that we don't want them casually spoken over the horn. And we want to make sure when people make oaths, they're very committed to what they say, and they don't make oaths that they can't achieve, or that we don't believe they're likely to achieve. Something said, when you make an oath, especially in a ritual context like that, there's a great power. If you make an oath and then you achieve what you oath to do, it's a greater thing and has more weight and more gravity to it than if you had achieved that without that oath. But that said, I think people, when they first get involved in Asatru, maybe they make some oaths that they didn't consider. They'll oath to someone they didn't know for very long, or to a kindred that they don't know very well. And instead of, hey, I'd like to be a part of this for a year and see where it goes. Hey, I'll take an oath to, participate in this relationship for a certain amount of time or with certain conditions. Very often, I oath to be your sworn brother till the end of time and for all eternity. And a really, really grand oath that maybe when you get to know someone a little bit better, or events in your life or events in their life change, it's an oath that you may look back on and wish that you didn't make. So be very careful when you enter into oaths, and realize that most oaths are a contractual relationship between 2 parties. It's very seldom a one-sided oath. So it's important, if you make an agreement with someone based on a certain set of contexts, that person maintains the integrity of their side of the oath as well. It's also something to think about, is if you make an oath with someone, there can be discussion between the 2 of you of dissolving that oath in an honorable and amicable way, as opposed to feeling bound to something for all eternity if both parties agree to diverge on it. This is a subject that any AFA member that wants to go in this in more detail, I'd encourage you to talk to our law speaker, Alan Turnage. This is something that he knows a lot about and has a lot of thoughts on, and I think he has a great insight on it if anybody wants to dig a little bit deeper into it. Next national event coming up. The next national event coming up is going to be Charming of the Plow in Washington State. It's a great event. It's been really amazing the last couple of years. I'm heading up to that. I'm looking very forward to it. It was a lot of fun last year. I know we've got some leadership coming in from different parts of the country. If you can make that, that would be great. You want to contact your local folk builder, then get you squared away, or you want to contact Mason Johnson, mjohnson@runestone.org, and he can get you set up and squared away on that. That's a very good question. If a legal minor were going to be married, would we perform the coming of age ceremony before the wedding? And does that ceremony prepare the individual for life events? First, hopefully, and that's one of the ideas I'm with as far as preparation for life events. We want there to be a process and not just one day, oh, I have a kid that's old enough, let's get them in the circle and have a ceremony. What we'd like to do, and I mentioned a bookending, starting of the process and completing the process, would be to prepare a young man or a young woman for life events and for entering that next phase of their life in a way to where they're prepared mentally, prepared spiritually, and ready to take that on. And I think that the responsibility of preparing our young people for that change of life event is more important than just that ritual. As far as if a legal minor were getting married, that enters into a legal gray area, where I think I'd like to consult our law speaker, Alan Turnage, he's also a practicing attorney. He'd know a little bit better about the implications of that. I would tend to think from here that is a special circumstance where maybe we would accelerate that coming of age if that life event was going to occur. But I think that varies state by state. And like I said, when we perform a wedding, it needs to be a legal wedding. We certainly don't practice child weddings. So the gray area of someone in that 16, 17 category, I think a lot of that depends on the state and the area that they're in and a lot of other factors. Thank you, Mandy. Mandy gives the man's proper name. Sri Dharma Pravartaka Acharya, and I'm really sorry for mispronouncing your title. No disrespect intended. Like I say, that gentleman and his association have been very supportive and great to us over the years. Zakharoff expresses it a little bit better, I think, than I did about how Dharma relates. Asatru is dharmic, as Vedic faith is dharmic. Usually we hear the term Dharma used in terms of Vedic faith, but it exists as a bigger concept than that. And if you guys would like to know more of that, I'd encourage you to go down that Google rabbit hole and look into that, because it's very interesting and I think a very important concept. Status of Njordhoff. Getting closer. Every one of these times, I promise, I want to tell you guys, hey, we got it. Today's the day. We're not quite there yet, but we are very, very close. As I've said, it's going to be in the state of Florida. It's called the property appraisals are set back in that entire state by several weeks. So we are in the process of making that happen. We're waiting on an appraisal to come through, and we should be set and ready to close on that very, very soon. I am just as excited, if not much more so, than all of you guys to announce us having it, but it is in the works. We're very much in the process, and hopefully I'll have something to tell you very soon on that. Sorry, guys, still reading over on the side. I want to make sure I'm getting everybody's questions answered, or at least addressed. Lord Fafnir. He makes a comment that AFA members that he's met have not been very serious about some of the oaths they've taken. I'm sorry. And he's seen oath members of kindreds leave in less than a year, and founding members of kindreds leave as well. That is a huge problem. It's a huge problem in House of Truth generally. It is a problem within the AFA, and it's something that we're trying really hard to fix. I've seen the same thing you've seen, and it's really disappointing, and it makes me sad too. It's one of the reasons that we keep trying to make the point. It's a reason that Gothi Young asked me to address the point, because it is very serious. And a lot of people take oaths far too lightly. So please be very serious about the oaths that you take, and don't take oaths lightly. There's no need to, and make sure that the verbiage of the oaths that you take is something that you can live by, and not setting yourself and the people you oath with up for a failure and a disappointment. But every time I see anyone break an oath, it's a sad thing. Insight into ancestral New Year's traditions. Suppose the biggest one I have a little bit of insight into, kind of goes with oaths, is the idea of making New Year's resolutions. Whereas I don't encourage oaths that you can't make or that you can't fulfill, I think that this is a really good time of year to make commitments to accomplish things in your own life. Whereas oathing to other people requires a different level of understanding. I think making an oath on something that you are capable and willing to put in the effort to accomplish is a very good thing to do this time of year. And a lot of different traditions. One is placing the hand on the Yule boar and making oaths on that Yule boar. I know that during Yule, that's something many of our people participate in. But making New Year's resolutions, resolving at this time of year to fix some things, to make things better, and to achieve, absolutely one of our traditions, absolutely something that we all should do. But it's not something that we should do casually. Even when we just make an oath to ourselves or about ourselves, it's important that we follow through. And that's one of the reasons of sacralizing it with making a commitment to it, is that we're going to accomplish the thing that we say we're going to accomplish. And I hope that all of us make resolutions, and I hope all of us keep those resolutions this time next year and can share with one another how we've accomplished them and can share our victories together. But I think those are really important. Folk builders, we got a question on what weekend Charming the Plow in Washington will be. I can't look it up right now. If one of you guys could post that over in the side chat, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So Cody is asking me to explain the 10th noble virtue. And the 10th noble virtue is victory. And some of you may not have heard that before, but in the House True Folk Assembly, we absolutely treat victory as a 10th on that list of 9 noble virtues. And it may seem more of an outcome than a principle, but it's not. It is a virtue within itself to be victorious. Our ancestors saw someone being a winner as an expression of their luck. And luck is built through right action. It's built through haminya. It's built through relationships with other people, and it's built through a relationship with your ancestors. But it's also built through hard work. Victory is a sign of you being a virtuous person. It's a sign of you being able to accomplish and to overcome. Sometimes those victories are grand accomplishments and grand things. You know, when we get Njord's, we'll be able to boast of a great victory for Njord and for us. But victories are also smaller accomplishments in your own life, winning, being successful in your relationship, being successful in your family, being successful in your job or in your pursuits. Victories come in all shapes and sizes, but the idea of setting out to accomplish something and succeeding is so very important. It's one of the things that really defines the True Folk Assembly is we have amazing people that do things, that get out and accomplish things. So often I find myself saying this, but also true isn't about belief in the Aesir. It's about loyalty to the Aesir. It's about an active loyalty. It's about doing things. Belief and intention are great, but if they're not followed up with action, they're worthless. What counts is what we do, what we accomplish. We are our deeds. And we truly believe that there is a virtue in those deeds being victorious. Sorry, guys, still reading over here on the side. We do have a lot of new people in the chat tonight. That's great to see. Hopefully it helps having these on a little bit different day of the week. I know having this on the weekend may mean some of our regular folks can't join us tonight. Hopefully everybody gets an opportunity, and hopefully I get the opportunity to talk to each of you guys. Audrius, we're glad to have you tonight. Like I said, we're glad to have all the folks that don't get to be here usually. Looks like we got a really interesting conversation going on the side. I'm glad to see that. Sorry, guys, I'm spending a lot of time reading here. Anybody got questions, please go ahead and ask them. Almost done with this chat on the side. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody's questions. So we've got a question. What are the differences and commonalities of the AFA and the Norena Society? I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. And whenever I address questions about the Norena Society, it's really important to me to separate two things. Mark Puryear is the founder of the Norena Society and the guy that's put in the majority of the work in the Norena Society. And I want to start out by saying and I mean this, I genuinely like Mark. Mark is a really good guy. He has always been great to me, to my family, and to the True Folk Assembly. I think Mark Puryear is a fantastic guy. Not a fan of the Norena Society. It's weird in the traditional sense of the word how so many things tonight are connecting and building upon one another. But just as I talked about that virtue of victory and of deeds, this is my assessment of the Norena Society, but I've not seen activity. I don't see a lot of the practice of True going on with those folks. What I do see is a lot of endless critiquing, endless scholarly debate on things, endless pondering what ancient people might have done to do different things. But All of those things are cool and interesting, and I'm fascinated by what our ancient ancestors did to practice their faith as much as the next guy. But that is not nearly as important as practicing our faith. Practicing Ausatru is much more important than learning about Ausatru. Practicing our belief, and this is where that virtue of victory comes in. Doing Ausatru, engaging in the gift cycle with our gods, worshiping with our folk is so much more important than obscure tidbits of ancient practices by ancient people. And I don't mean any disrespect to our ancestors. I certainly hope that 1,000, 1,500 years from now, my descendants will be practicing Ausatru in a way that's relevant to their time, to where they're at. And if they don't ever do things the like we did in the good old days back in Matt's day, good. If they're doing something that's relevant to what they're doing, if they're honoring their ancestors and their gods in a way that brings them glory and they appreciate, meaning the gods and ancestors, then fantastic. They're accomplishing what they're doing. Ausatru is about doing. And not only do I think the Norena Society spends far too much time critiquing what other people might do or what they think our ancestors could have, should have done by some obscure bit of archaeology. The other thing that I've seen them do, and I've seen this turn in the past probably 3 or 4 years, they've become very, very negative. They don't just do all this research, but then they want to criticize those of us who are actually practicing Ausatru in all the ways we're doing it wrong, instead of venturing out into the arena and practicing it themselves or building something. They very often, as a whole, seek to critique and thumb their nose at people who are doing activity. And I take offense to that. Ross, do I think there'll ever be a Sunday Mass equivalent where folk meet regularly to discuss and or listen to a Gothi discuss some specific topics? Absolutely. The more we have, and we already see this a little bit in kindreds and small groups, the more we have more of our folk near Hofs, and that means folks moving and getting closer to our Hofs, but it also means as our Hofs expand and we have more Hofs, we'll have a better opportunity to get together weekly like that, or even a couple of times a week. And I'd love to see that happen. Right now, our model tends to be much more get together a couple times a month, or maybe even one time a month, and have one of our have a bloat, have a stumble, have a meal, and to celebrate our faith and to worship. It would be great. We do have talks at those very often, but it would be great to be able to get together on a more regular basis. And that's just an issue of proximity. As I've seen, that's getting better all the time, though. Zakharoff, I do not like the way the Norena Society interprets a lot of things. I'm just talking about Mark in the sense of him being a good guy, and he's a nice guy, and he's been very open-handed in dealing, very respectful in dealing with us. But as far as his theology, another point I should have made on differences between the Norena Society and the Ausatru Folk Assembly. Trying to think of the best way to put this, but because so much of their effort is put on finding new obscure bits of lore, I think very often when they find one piece that doesn't fit, they try to mold the whole thing around the obscure exception that they found, instead of the plethora of things that say to go one way. If they're the only people that found this obscure tidbit to where maybe one guy diverged, they're really quick to embrace that. And I think that's, we all have a tendency to want to have our own special idea how to do something, or to feel important because we know some obscure thing that other people don't know. And I think that sometimes they take that too far. And I think that that's something they do tend to do. The other thing that I do think is important, so when I talked about practice and engaging in that gift cycle, in the True Folk Assembly, our relationship with our gods is real and not conceptual. And it's hard to explain this if maybe you haven't had that experience in your life. But there's no question to me about the reality of our gods. And there's no question to me that the True Folk Assembly has built a relationship with these gods, and that that these gods are very important in my life. And hopefully I've brought myself to their notice in some honorable way. It's really different when you approach religiosity through a relationship scope than through an academic lens. If it's all a science project, then you're not building a real relationship with the gods. You're learning about the gods. And I think that sometimes that's one of the things the Norena Society does that deviates from the True Folk Assembly. They approach the gods through academics and through studies and through rehearsed things, as opposed to through open-hearted gifting and relationship building between the gods and the folk. And it's much more important to me that I convey to the gods my devotion to them, and that I receive from them their blessings or their favor in some way, than it is that I become super knowledgeable about obscure bits of their lore, but don't have that personal connection in any way between their energy and mine, between their heart and mine. And I think it's just a really different way to approach religiosity. I think that having a PhD in military science is very different than being Napoleon. I think that studying Ausatru is very different than being Ausatru. We absolutely will keep building toffs. Like I said, your toff is coming. It's coming up very fast. I'm very excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. I think that's going to be starting this next year off in a really, really cool way here very soon. I think it's an interesting point on the side. Practice of our beliefs will also give knowledge far beyond what can be gained in a book. And I think that's really true. Something that I firmly believe, I think that we are certainly blessed with all of the lore and all of the wisdom that's come down to us from our ancestors. I think that the history, the archaeology, the literature out of Iceland, all of those things are amazing, and we're so very fortunate to have them. But our connection to our gods is deeper than that. And I fully believe that if our ancestors found themselves on the other side of the galaxy someday without any of that, that they could still build a relationship with our gods, and they might have different stories or know them by different names. But I think that as long as our folk exist, we can connect with our gods and build a relationship with our divinities. We do that through practice, and we do that through that exchange of gifts, be they physical gifts, be they energy, be they love and devotion and worship. That's how we build our faith. Dr. Axford, I would suggest you go first to www.runestone.org. You can learn all the stuff about the True Folk Assembly. You can look at our library with our monthly newsletters, a lot of our old publications. I'd recommend this YouTube channel, can show you a lot about our practice and what we do. As far as learning about the lore of Asatru, there's a ton of different sources, and it really depends on what you want to learn. For some very basics, just as a good introduction to modern Asatru, I'd suggest Asatru, A Native European Spirituality by our founder, Stephen McNallen. That's always a really good place to start. I think the poetic and the prose Eddas contain kind of the main broad strokes of our lore, but those can be really difficult to access all in one gulp. So I'd recommend, picking through those and, going down rabbit holes on what those things mean. I would also recommend, for kind of a basic understanding of how our ancestors saw it, The Culture of the Teutons by Wilhelm Grunbeck. I think that's a very, very useful book, and it's one of the books on Asatru that I've got the most out of in my time. John Ray, I know absolutely nothing about the National Justice Party, so I can't comment on that. And this is the first I've heard of it. Apparently, a lot of folks over inside have heard of the National Justice Party and have thoughts on that. Okay, Ox, can you clarify your question a little bit? I'm not sure I follow. You ask over on the side, as far as representing the AFA, what would be a decent choice of symbols and materials? And I'm not sure what you're asking. So if you could clarify that a little bit for me, I'd really like to answer your question. Corey, I wish I had a lot to say about Wisdom of Odin on YouTube. I've heard a lot about them. I've never watched one of their videos, so I really can't comment on it. I have heard in the past when other people were condemning the AFA, they refused to flat out condemn the AFA. But again, I don't know what I'm talking about it on it, so I really don't want to overspeak on that. Is good personal optics a revolt against the modern world? Unfortunately, yes. In the world that we live, so I'll say this, and I think this is really important. Society around us, certainly in the West, has embraced everything antinomian, a lot of the strange, the bizarre, the deformed, the grotesque. And I think that when we exemplify beauty, be that in the physical form by being in the best shape we can be that by dressing nice, looking nice, acting nice with politeness and noble behavior, beautiful art, be it, visual, auditory, anything else. When we embrace beauty, that, not only is it a revolt against the modern world, it's the right thing to do, and it sets us apart. And one thing I like about the term Aryan is it implies shining with nobility, not just being noble, but shining with that nobility. Oh, we got our special guest. My daughter Aubrey wanted to join us for a minute. Mandy, thank you for bringing her up here. Look, it's you. I'll tell you what's really neat as kind of an aside. It's cool because, everybody with our TVs now, we use Roku's or Fire Sticks or whatever else. It's neat to have this on the big screen downstairs and for her to get to watch it and see herself and see her dad on the TV screen. It shocks me that she's growing up as fast as she is. She's getting big. But yeah, that's a little bit of a side. I suppose having little beautiful daughters is a revolt against the modern world too. So yeah, good optics, looking nice and being classy is always a really good and advisable thing to do. And it represents the AFA very well. All right, guys. Still checking in on the side here. Sorry, guys. I lost where we were at. What is my general opinion of Epstein and Maxwell and that whole mess? It's gross, and I can't plumb the depths of what all's going on in that situation. I don't know what's fact and what's fiction. I know it's very hard for me to believe when stuff that's very, very scandalous all of a sudden gets disappeared and we don't hear about it again. That certainly makes me suspicious of things. And anything that exploits and abuses children is abominable, no matter who you are. It's a terrible thing. I don't want to go into the whatever theories about those two people, but a little bit I do know is disgusting and should offend all of us. The fact that they're connected to so many people who do have power in our society is also very, very concerning. And I think that concerns most of us who know any bit about it. So what are some of the goals for the AFA in 2022? It's a complicated question because I don't always want to show the cards when there's still some things out that we're waiting on. We always got a lot of things in the back burner that we're working on and that we're doing. Your toff is huge. Getting that, establishing that, doing the dedication, building that region, having a Hoff in Florida is going to be a big, big game changer for us. I can't go into super detail on it just because we don't know and don't have it figured out yet. And there's a lot of variables, but certainly once we get Njord's Hoff, there's also the consideration of Frey's Hoff that will come after. I can't guarantee anything about that in 2022, but it's something that we're certainly looking at and planning on. Not just acquiring Njord's Hoff, but figuring out how quickly and how responsibly we can go ahead and pay that off is going to be an interesting challenge in the coming year. I know we're continuing to watch some growth. A lot of what I want to see happen in 2022 depends on some things with borders and with international rules in response to people's various things that they're doing labeled under the COVID umbrella. I know a lot of folks still can't travel internationally, but we'd love to see and strengthen a lot of our international membership. I know it's been very hard for our folks in Canada not being able to cross the border regularly. That's something, if that changes in 2022, we have some things we'd like to do. Certainly love to see some better support for our folks in Europe and our folks in Australia. And again, finding out what the governments around the world do with different things is going to determine a lot of that. What I would like to see is hit a new membership high in 2022. We've been growing tremendously, not just numerically, but in quality in this last year. A big part of that is some of you guys may have noticed, we've had a big influx of people volunteering to be apprentice folk builders. And we've had some amazing people come through and do amazing things. We've got some really thriving AFA communities where we haven't had before. So we're very excited about that. And got another side project that we're working on that I think you guys will be pretty excited about. But I want to find out a little bit more about some details before I throw it out there. But I'm pretty excited about what we're going to accomplish together in 2022. Sorry, guys, when I start scrolling over on the side, it jumps sometimes. So I go back and I miss something. So how exactly do we plan to bring all like-minded whites under both the gods and a single banner? I don't pretend that that's going to get all of our people to come home to our gods and to join the House True Folk Assembly, but I'd like to think that it does. It certainly is bringing people in numbers. And there's a lot of people that are ousted true today that weren't this time last year. And there's a whole lot of our folk that are united under the AFA banner than there was last year. So I'm going to keep doing the very best I can to build the Ousted True Folk Assembly. One thing that I think helps for that to be successful is by having real things. And when I say real is probably misleading, but tangible things. Our Hoffs being physical, where people can go into a physical place of worship, have an address, and as silly as this may sound, have a marker on Google Maps that you can type in, Odin's Hoff, Thor's Hoff, or Baldur's Hoff, and you can get directions to a place where we're worshiping our gods. That's huge. And it's done a lot to legitimize what we're doing, not only in the eyes of our members, but also in the eyes of their family and their coworkers and other people in these expanding circles that get to see that our faith is sincere, that what we do and that the Ousted True Folk Assembly is a real, sincere thing. And in the communities that we're in, those folks get to see that we're a force of good, that we got good-looking, smiling families doing good things, worshiping our gods, and building healthy lives together in those communities. I think the more we do that, the more of our people will come home, the more of our people will come back to our gods, and more of our people will join under the Tri-Horn banner. Wow, this is far behind. I'm reading stuff from just when Aubrey came on. You guys have been great. I'm glad. Oh, wow, it's almost 7. Okay. Time is flying tonight. People have had some really good questions and good stuff they want to talk about. Okay, what are my thoughts on anonymity versus using our own real names? Do I think there's a level of being personally public where that line is crossed and can no longer be anonymous? So I think a lot of us have really strong feelings on this. I want to start out first. I get it. It's very, I don't know. I get it. I get that there are many reasons why people would want to be very anonymous with their faith, with their interaction with the Ousted True Folk Assembly, with a lot of things. We live in a very scary world. I think that we've always lived in a scary world, but I think that the fears are different now. I think people are very scared of information gathering. I think folks are scared, certainly, of doxing, of being shunned for political wrongthink. Certainly in the West, that's a huge problem that we face now with this deplatforming and cancel culture that we're in. I get it. Folks who've built careers are scared of losing careers. Folks who have young families are scared for safety. I think if everybody's honest, folks are scared of being shunned by their friends and family, or being thought of as being politically correct, or being called names. I think a lot of people are scared just to have eyes on them. I don't like that, but it's real and it's honest. And I do understand that. I think that as much as we can, we should not be anonymous. We should live our life, live our faith, live our values in the open, with our name and our face associated with it. I think that means we need to be careful of the way we say things and the way we present ourselves. I think that when we are practicing openly and doing things openly, there's a much bigger need to be articulate, to be noble in our speech, noble in how we present ourselves, and to be mindful of that. That's something we should be doing anyway. And a truth that is uncomfortable for a lot of people is the more of us are out there living in the open, standing by our values, standing by who we are and what we believe in, we pave the way for other people to be comfortable doing that. When there's a significant number of people doing that, there's safety in that. When it's just one guy out by himself, it's hard. When there's 2 or 3, it's that much easier. It's 200 or 300, easier still. When there's thousands, tens of thousands, millions, it becomes much easier for those who come after us to be able to live authentically. I've found in my own life that the more I unify who I am to where there's not, I'm this guy around my friends, I'm this guy around my family, this guy over here, this guy around these people, the more it's holistic and that all the parts of my life synergize, the happier I am, the more successful I've been able to be in my life, with my family, with my friends, and just personally. I think there is absolutely an esoteric truth that the more authentically you exist and the more courageous you are with being honest about who you are and what you believe and presenting that well, there's a certain luck benefit that comes with that. And I think we all benefit from that. So as much as we can, I think that being open with who we are and what we stand for is extremely important. It is courageous, and courage is certainly one of the noblest of our virtues. So I'm not calling anybody out that feels the need to be anonymous. I get it. But each and every one of you that's not anonymous, that's proud, that puts your name out and says, here I am, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is what I stand for, I salute you for that. And I think that's the way to go. And I'd love to see as many of our people possible do that. Okay, that's an interesting question. If a woman is having trouble holding a pregnancy, what can we do spiritually to help? I'm not sure if I understand the question, but I think the answer is the same. But what can we do spiritually to help? There's a number of different healing rites that get practiced. I think within the Aus True Folk Assembly, if you contact Githya Katie Erickson, our Circle of Air is a kind of a healing prayer group that we have that helps people. I know that we did a very powerful healing rite at Winter Nights a few years ago for a member's daughter, a young daughter who was going through some surgeries. And I can't say definitively it's because of that, but that situation worked out very well. So I think there's power in that. There's power in shared intention. I think it's really important to get folks that know that person or that can connect to that person in some way, know their name, a picture, have some interaction where there's a strong intent. I think there's a lot of healing rites that can be done. I know I'm kind of repeating myself on that because it's really hard to get into specifics. I think people call upon that healing in really different ways. I think certainly approaching and invoking the ancestors for help, that person's particular ancestors, I think that's valuable. I think approaching the gods, especially Frigga's handmaiden air, is a really important thing to do. I know that or Urus, that runic galder and runic chanting that way, especially when done by people connected with their intent, is valuable. That's typically one thing I do when I do a healing rite is a group galder while we're each physically touching one another and galdering that Uru's primal healing strength. I think that helps. So I think those are some of the things that we can do. But I think boiling it down, the more people with the more focused attention and calling in help from the other side of the veil, combining those three things in the best way that you can, I think has the best chance of success. I know it sounds a little bit out there, but I've seen it work, and I believe that it does work. And if you want help with that, like I said, if you reach out to Githia Katie Erickson, that's going to be your best bet. Hopefully somebody can put her information over in the side window for you as far as her email address. But she runs our Circle of Air, and a lot of the women in the Austro Folk Assembly do some healing rites that way. Sorry, guys, I'm reading through the chat. It looks like you guys are having a good discussion. I appreciate that. All right, guys. Let's get a little bit after 7 here. If anybody has any last minute questions or things they want to get my take on, please let me know over in the side, and I will be happy to answer those. If not, I'm going to be wrapping it up here pretty soon. It's been fantastic talking with you guys. I'm very excited to start 2022 with you guys. Very excited for the things we have in store. It's been a great conversation tonight, and I really appreciate you guys all taking the time to join me. All right, guys. Well, I wish you all a fantastic year. Get started on the right foot. Go out there and make victory happen. And we will talk to you guys next month. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA.